So in this video, I want to talk about the rumors that have been going around lately about Nintendo possibly making a new version of the Nintendo Switch that will be able to do 4K and will pretty much be a more powerful Nintendo Switch. Kind of like what Sony and Microsoft did with the PS4 Pro and Xbox One X. Well, I remember as early as 2018, we've been starting to hear these rumors about Nintendo releasing an upgraded Switch, a Switch Pro, as people like to call it. But obviously, these rumors have never materialized. So far, we did get two revised models of the Switch. The original Switch model got its own revision in that it got a much longer battery life and was just a better unit overall than the previous model. But the big one, obviously, was the Switch Lite, which was essentially a smaller version of the Switch that couldn't be docked, so it wasn't technically a Switch. It was a handheld Switch that couldn't be used on your TV. So a lot of people weren't a big fan of that. They didn't like that you couldn't dock it. They wished that that was an option at least. But it was also $100 cheaper than the base model Switch. So it was a good entry point for a lot of people. That was in 2019, and in early 2020, a whole bunch of rumors started to come around that Nintendo was finally going to do the Switch Pro. We've been hearing about it for so many years. People kept saying 2020, that was going to be the year that Nintendo was finally going to release a more powerful Switch. But not long after those rumors started to come around, Nintendo actually made an official statement saying that they had no plans on releasing a new model of the Switch in 2020. So those rumors were crushed pretty quickly. And now these rumors are popping up again in 2021. Now the new rumors say that the new Switch is going to come out in late 2021, so around September or October, in time for the holiday season. It's going to launch for $400, which is a really steep price for a console that's been on the market for 4 years now. It's going to have upgraded visuals, it's going to have faster CPU, it's going to be able to run at 4K in docked mode, but as far as the actual handheld display, that is not going to change. It's still going to be 720p. And of course, everything I just said over the past few seconds, take it with a grain of salt, because again, we've been hearing rumors saying that they're going to make a new Switch for years, and it hasn't materialized so far. So there's a good chance that the rumors we're hearing now are also bullshit. But let's assume for a second that it's going to turn out to be true. It's a legit leak, it's going to happen, and that's what we're going to get from Nintendo this year. Who in their right mind would think about buying this? $400. That's the same price as a digital PS5, the one without the disc. A brand new next-gen console that just dropped less than 6 months ago. Only a fucking idiot would think it's a good idea to put the same amount of money to pay the same price as a next-gen brand new console as they would for a 4-year-old console like the Nintendo Switch. And yeah, the new model can do 4K or whatever, but it's not going to be nearly as powerful as not even the PS5 and Series X. How about the PS4 Pro and Xbox One X? There's no way the Switch Pro will even be able to keep up with those consoles. Never mind the actual next-gen systems. And, obviously, it's a revised model of the Switch, right? So it's not next-gen, but that's the other thing. It's 2021. We're 2 years away from Nintendo's next-generation system. Nintendo said last year that the Switch is halfway through its life cycle. So do the math. If the Switch was halfway through its life cycle in 2020, that means we're going to be getting a new console from Nintendo, a next-gen Nintendo console in 2023. So the Switch only has 2 years left before it gets phased out and replaced by whatever Nintendo's coming up with next. Maybe it's the Switch 2. We don't know yet. I have a feeling that it will be another Switch console. It'll be a sequel to the Switch, but who knows? What we do know is that the Switch has more years behind it than it does ahead. So what would be the point in putting so much money into a console, into a platform that doesn't have much time left? You might as well take that $400 and flush it down the fucking toilet. Even if it was $300, it's still a waste, because the Switch will be dead in 2 years' time. I get it. There are a lot of people out there that would love the idea of playing Mario Odyssey and Breath of the Wild in 4K. But first of all, you guys know that this new Switch is probably not going to be true 4K. It's going to be some checkerboard shit like we got with the PS4 Pro. There's no way it's going to be true 4K. That's one thing. The other thing is that it's very likely that Nintendo's next system is going to be a sequel to the Switch, and will probably have a feature where the Switch games that you own will not only be backwards compatible, but they will be running at enhanced resolutions and frame rates, kind of like the PlayStation 5 having enhanced features for PS4 games running at better resolutions and frame rates. Same thing goes for the Xbox Series X, which has an FPS boost feature. There's a good chance the Switch 2 is going to have that shit too. And make no mistake about it, Nintendo is going to release a sequel to the Switch. That's what they do with all their successful systems. The Game Boy had a sequel in the Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance. The Nintendo DS had the 3DS. The Wii had the Wii U. The Switch is going to be the best-selling console in Nintendo history. It has a very good chance of outselling the Wii, so it will be the biggest success story in Nintendo history besides the DS. There's no way they're not going to do a follow-up to that. We will get a Switch 2. That may not be the name of it, but essentially is going to do what the Switch did, just with better visuals, and it will be a next-gen experience. It may not hold up to the PS5 and Series X, but it will be a significant upgrade from the original Switch. So there's no reason for anybody to be thinking about buying a Switch Pro if the rumors are true and Nintendo is actually going to go through with it. There is a good chance they will, though, because that's what they have done in the past. The DSi came out 2 years before the 3DS, and it was also about 2 years before the Switch came out that Nintendo released the new 3DS. And that's actually something I want to talk about for a bit, since I just brought up the new 3DS, which was a more powerful version of the 3DS. It was slightly more powerful. It wasn't like a huge boost, but it also had that right circle pad, which made a lot of games much easier to play because you could rotate the camera angle a lot easier, and you just had more control because the original 3DS only had one circle pad. So that was a huge upgrade, but there are also games that were exclusive to the new 3DS that you cannot buy and play if you only had the original model. And that's where I start having a problem, because, okay, someone wants to waste $400 of their money on a Switch Pro, that's their problem. I couldn't give less of a fuck if they waste their money, right? But when it gets to a point where so many people are supporting this bullshit, where they buy an updated model of the console that has exclusive games for it, like the new 3DS did, I'm sorry, but there's no way that you can justify it. That shit is unacceptable, and it makes me less likely to buy a new Nintendo system going forward, because, you know, the idea when you buy a new console or a handheld, the idea is that you get the full support for however long the generation lasts. And then, you know, of course, when the next-gen system comes out, that console is no longer supported. But when you have this bullshit where, like, halfway through the life cycle, they update the console and there are certain games that you cannot play unless you buy the new one, that's fucking ridiculous. It's a total betrayal of the people that have stuck with your platform since day one, or even the people that bought it a year ago. So if the Switch Pro is coming, I have a bad feeling we're going to see that shit again, where there are going to be Switch Pro exclusives that you cannot play if you only have the original Switch model. I know if Nintendo does that, there are going to be so many fanboys that will justify it, saying, well, the Switch Pro is more powerful than the original Switch, and if there's some games out there that can't handle the original Switch but can, you know, they can run on the more powerful version, then so be it. The game should be able to go on there because it's better than not having them at all, right? No, I don't accept that, because when you create a console, when you create a platform, you should stick with that platform until the end. The Switch Pro is not going to be a next-gen Nintendo system. It's going to be part of the same generation. So it's not like someone complaining about PS5 games not being able to run on the PS4. This is a completely different case. And mind you, the PS4 Pro and Xbox Series X didn't have any exclusive games that you could play on those systems, but you could not play on the base models. And that's how it's supposed to be. If you invest in a platform, you deserve full support for the entire generation. So if the Switch Pro does have exclusive games, that would be the only problem I would have with it. Otherwise, if you want to waste your money, go right ahead. I just don't want to hear you bitching and complaining in 2 years when your brand new $400 console is already obsolete.